I found the only way out of this prison. I wish I hadn't. My name is Marcus Webb, and I spent 11 years inside Blackridge Penitentiary before I found the way out. Not the legal way, not through parole or good behavior or any of the systems they tell you will set you free. I found the other way. The one they don't put on any map. The one that existed long before they built those walls. And now, sitting here in this motel room 3 states away, I need to tell someone what happened. I need to tell someone why freedom feels worse than any cell I ever sat in. Before I explain what I found beneath Blackridge, you need to understand something about that place. It wasn't just a prison, it was something older, wearing the skin of a prison. Blackridge was built in 1987 on a plot of land in rural Pennsylvania that nobody wanted. The official story said it was cheap government land, perfect for a maximum security facility. But inmates talk. We always talk. And the stories that circulated through those cell blocks went back further than 1987. They went back to the 1800s, to a mining operation that collapsed and buried 47 men alive. They went back to the 1920s, when a psychiatric hospital stood on that same ground and burned down with all its patients locked inside. They went back to whispers about what the indigenous peoples who lived here first called this place, a name that roughly translated to where the earth swallows. I didn't believe any of it when I first arrived. I was 23 years old, scared out of my mind, and facing 15 years for armed robbery. I didn't have time for ghost stories. I had to survive. Have you ever had to completely rebuild yourself just to make it through another day? That's what prison does to you. It strips away everything soft, everything hopeful, and leaves behind something harder, something that can endure. For the first 5 years, I kept my head down. I worked in the laundry facility, avoided the gangs, and counted the days on my calendar. I became a model prisoner because I wanted to get out the right way. I wanted to walk through those front gates with my release papers in hand and never look back. But Blackridge had other plans for me. It started with the sounds. Every prison has sounds at night. Men crying, men praying, guards walking their rounds. But Blackridge had something else. A low hum that seemed to come from beneath the floor. A vibration you felt more than heard. I asked other inmates about it during my first year, and most of them just shrugged. Background noise, they said, the heating system, the ventilation, the ancient pipes that ran through the building. But a few of them looked at me differently when I asked. A few of them leaned in close and told me to stop asking questions, to plug my ears at night and never, ever follow the sound. I wish I had listened to them. The thing about prison is that it becomes your whole world. The walls, the routines, the faces you see every day. After a while, you forget that anything else exists. You forget what grass feels like under your feet. You forget what it means to choose where you walk, when you eat, when you sleep. Everything is decided for you, and part of you starts to find comfort in that. At least you don't have to think. At least you don't have to choose. But the humming never let me forget. It was always there, reminding me that something existed beyond these walls, something that wanted me to find it. The 6th year of my sentence is when everything changed. That was when they transferred Victor Reyes to the cell next to mine. Victor was different from anyone I'd met inside. He was in his 60s, had been incarcerated for over 30 years, and had been transferred to Blackridge from another facility that shut down. Most lifers I knew had a certain deadness in their eyes, an acceptance of their fate. Victor's eyes were alive, too alive. They darted around constantly, watching things that weren't there, tracking movements in empty corners. For the first 3 months, he didn't speak to anyone. He just sat in his cell, writing in a small notebook that he kept hidden under his mattress. The guards did searches every week, but somehow they never found it. It was like the notebook didn't want to be found. One night, I woke up to find Victor standing at the bars that separated our cells. His face was pressed between them, and he was staring directly at me. "You hear it too," he said. It wasn't a question. I sat up in my bunk, heart pounding. "Hear what?" "The humming, the calling. It's louder for some of us, the ones it wants." I should have told him he was crazy. I should have rolled over and gone back to sleep. But I couldn't, because he was right. The humming was louder that night, louder than it had ever been, and it felt like it was coming from directly beneath my cell. "What is it?" I asked. Victor smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. The way out. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I lay in my bunk staring at the ceiling, listening to the humming that seemed to grow louder with each passing hour. It was like the sound knew I was paying attention now, like it was responding to my awareness. During the day, I watched Victor more carefully. I noticed things I had missed before. The way he would pause sometimes, tilting his head like he was listening to something no one else could hear. The way his hand would tremble when he wrote in that notebook, as if the words coming through him were too powerful to control. The way he looked at certain spots on the floor, certain cracks in the wall, with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Over the following weeks, Victor told me everything he knew. He spoke in fragments, in whispers, during yard time, in notes passed through the bars at night. He told me about the tunnels that existed beneath Blackridge, not maintenance tunnels or sewer systems, but something far older, passages that had been there before the prison, before the hospital, before the mines, passages that led somewhere else. The prison was built on top of them on purpose, Victor explained during one of our yard conversations. We sat on a bench far from the other inmates, speaking in low voices. Someone knew what was here. Someone wanted to keep people close to the openings, to feed it. Feed what? Victor looked at me with those two alive eyes. I don't know what it is. I don't think it has a name. But it's hungry, Marcus. It's always hungry. And sometimes when it finds someone it likes, it offers them a deal. What kind of deal? Freedom. Real freedom. You walk into those tunnels, and you come out somewhere else, somewhere far away. You escape without ever going through a gate or climbing a fence. I felt a chill run down my spine despite the summer heat. That's impossible. Is it? Then explain to me why inmates have been disappearing from this prison for decades, not escaping, not dying, disappearing, vanishing from locked cells in the middle of the night without a trace. I wanted to dismiss everything Victor said as the ravings of a man who had been locked up too long, but I couldn't forget the humming. I couldn't forget the way it seemed to pulse beneath my feet like a heartbeat. And I couldn't forget the stories I'd heard during my years at Blackridge. Stories about inmates who were there one day and gone the next. Stories the guards refused to discuss. Stories that got buried in paperwork and forgotten. What would you do if you were trapped somewhere and someone offered you a way out? Would you take it, even if you didn't understand what you were agreeing to? I spent months wrestling with that question. I had 4 more years on my sentence. 4 more years of the humming getting louder every night. 4 more years of watching Victor scribble in his notebook, mapping something I couldn't see. 4 more years of feeling like the ground beneath me was alive and aware and waiting. Then Victor disappeared. I remember the exact moment I realized he was gone. It was 6:15 in the morning, and the guards were doing their routine count. I heard them pass his cell without stopping, without calling out his number, without acknowledging that anyone had ever been there. I pressed myself against the bars, trying to see into his cell, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The cell was pristine, not empty in the way a cell looks when someone gets transferred, empty in the way a cell looks when it's never been occupied. The mattress was new, still wrapped in plastic. The walls were clean, no marks or scratches. Even the smell was wrong. Victor's cell had always smelled like old paper and sweat. Now it smelled like bleach and nothing. I woke up one morning and his cell was empty. Not just empty of him, but empty of everything. His belongings, his notebook, his mattress, his clothes. The cell looked like no one had ever lived there. When I asked the guards what happened, they looked at me like I was crazy. There was no Victor Reyes. There had never been anyone in that cell. They showed me the records. The cell had been empty for the past year. But I remembered him. I remembered every conversation, every warning, every fragment of information he had shared. And I remembered what he told me on our last night. When you're ready, listen for the humming. Follow it to where it's loudest. You'll find a crack in the wall of cell block D, behind the shower drain in the last stall. The crack is small, but it grows when the humming peaks. Squeeze through. Follow the tunnel down. Don't stop, no matter what you hear. Don't turn back, and whatever you do, don't let it learn your real name. I waited 6 more months. I told myself I was being rational, gathering information, making sure I wasn't losing my mind. But really, I was just scared. Scared of what I might find, scared of what I might lose. The night I finally decided to go, the humming was so loud I could feel it in my teeth. It was calling me, specifically me. I knew that with a certainty I couldn't explain. I had gotten myself transferred to cell block D 3 months earlier by getting into a staged fight with another inmate. The showers there were old, poorly maintained, and largely unsupervised during the night shift. I had checked the last stall dozens of times and never found any crack. But that night, when I pressed my hand against the wall behind the drain, I felt it. A gap in the concrete that hadn't been there before. A gap that was growing wider as I watched. Have you ever made a decision that you knew would change everything? A decision you couldn't take back once you stepped forward? I squeezed through the crack. The first thing I noticed was the temperature change. The prison was always cold, the kind of institutional cold that seeps into your bones and never quite leaves. But this was different. The tunnel was warm. Not warm like a heated room, but warm like the inside of something living, like stepping into the belly of some enormous creature. The second thing I noticed was the silence. Prisons are never quiet. Even in the dead of night, there's always something. Snoring, crying, footsteps, the hum of electricity. But here, in this tunnel, there was nothing. A silence so complete that I could hear my own heartbeat echoing off the walls. I stood there for a long moment, letting my eyes adjust. The darkness wasn't complete. There was a faint luminescence coming from somewhere, a pale greenish glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. It was enough to see by, barely, but what I saw didn't make sense. The tunnel on the other side was not made of concrete or stone or anything I could identify. The walls were smooth and slightly warm, like flesh. They pulsed with that humming sound, and I realized I wasn't hearing it anymore. I was feeling it. The entire tunnel was vibrating with a frequency that seemed to resonate with something deep inside my chest. I walked for what felt like hours. The tunnel sloped downward, always downward, spiraling into the earth in a way that made me lose all sense of direction. There was no light, but somehow I could see. Not clearly, but enough. Enough to put one foot in front of the other. Enough to notice that the walls were getting closer, that the ceiling was getting lower, that I was being swallowed. The voice came when I was so deep that I had forgotten what the sky looked like. It didn't speak in words exactly. It was more like thoughts being placed directly into my mind. Thoughts that felt foreign and familiar at the same time. You came. I stopped walking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "Who are you?" I asked out loud. My voice sounded strange in that tunnel, flat and dead, like the walls were absorbing it. "I am the way out. I am the freedom you've been seeking. I am the end of your imprisonment." "How? How can you get me out?" "The tunnels connect. What is here is also there. What is now is also then. Walk far enough, and you will emerge somewhere else. Someone else." "What do you mean, someone else?" The voice didn't answer that question directly. Instead, I felt a sensation wash over me. Images flooded my mind. I saw myself walking out of a gas station bathroom in Nevada. I saw myself with a different face, a different name, a different life. No records, no history, no past. Just freedom. Pure, complete freedom. This can be yours. All I require is something small, something you won't miss. What? The thing that makes you Marcus Webb. The thing that connects you to who you were. Give it to me, and you will be free. I stood in that pulsing darkness and tried to understand what was being asked of me. My identity? My memories? My soul? The voice had told me not to give it my real name, but it already knew who I was. It had always known. Can you imagine being offered everything you ever wanted, but knowing, somehow, that the price was more than you could afford? I should have turned back. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to run, to climb back up through that crack and return to my cell and serve out my sentence like a normal person. But I had come too far, and the promise of freedom was so close I could taste it. "Okay," I said. "Take what you need." The pain was unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't physical pain, though my body collapsed to the floor of that tunnel. It was deeper than that. It was the pain of being unmade. I felt pieces of myself being pulled away, examined, and discarded. Memories flickered through my mind like a slideshow, and each one that passed was gone forever. My mother's face, my first kiss, the feeling of summer rain on my skin, the reason I had committed the robbery that sent me to prison. All of it stripped away, leaving behind something hollow and incomplete. When it was over, I was still Marcus Webb. I still knew my name and my history. But there were gaps now, holes in my memory where important things used to be. And worse than the gaps was the feeling that something else had moved into those empty spaces, something that wasn't me. Rise, walk forward. You will emerge in freedom. I walked. I don't know for how long. The tunnel leveled out and then began to slope upward. The walls changed from that fleshy texture back to stone, then to concrete, then to dirt. When I finally squeezed through another crack and emerged into blinding daylight, I found myself standing behind a rest stop in the middle of the Arizona desert. I had done it. I had escaped. The Arizona sun was blinding after the darkness of the tunnels. I was still wearing my prison uniform, bright orange against the brown desert landscape. I found a donation bin behind a church 3 miles down the road and changed into civilian clothes for the first time in 11 years. The fabric felt strange against my skin, too soft, too light. Do you know what it's like to suddenly have choices again after years of having none? I stood at a crossroads and I could go anywhere. No one was telling me where to walk. It should have felt like liberation. Instead, it felt like falling. For the first 3 months, I thought I had made the right choice. I hitchhiked across the country, found work under a fake name, and built something resembling a normal life. No one was looking for me because, as far as the prison record showed, Marcus Webb had never existed, just like Victor, just like all the others. But then the dream started. Every night, I found myself back in that tunnel, back in that pulsing darkness with the voice that wasn't a voice. It showed me things, horrible things, things that were happening to the pieces of myself that I had given away, things that were being done with my memories, my emotions, my identity. It was using them, feeding on them, growing stronger with every fragment it consumed. And it was still hungry. The hunger wasn't like normal hunger. It wasn't a growling stomach or a craving for food. It was a hunger for experience, for sensation, for life itself. And I was the only way it could feed. I started noticing small changes in myself, the way my hand would reach for things I didn't want to touch, the way my feet would carry me to places I had no intention of going. It was like living with a puppet master who was slowly learning how to pull my strings. Have you ever felt like you were being watched from inside your own mind? Like something was looking out through your eyes, learning what you saw, wanting what you wanted. The first time I noticed it affecting my behavior was in a grocery store. I was standing in the checkout line when I felt an overwhelming urge to follow the woman in front of me to her car. Not to hurt her exactly, just to watch, to learn, to understand what it felt like to be whole. I fought the urge and left the store empty-handed, shaking so badly I could barely walk. But the urges kept coming. Every day they got stronger. Every day the thing inside me grew more insistent. It wanted to experience life through me. It wanted to feel what humans feel, and when I couldn't give it what it wanted, it took. I would lose hours. Whole chunks of time would disappear, and I would find myself in strange places with no memory of how I got there. Once, I woke up standing in someone's backyard at 3 a.m, staring through their window at a family eating dinner. I had been there for hours, according to my watch, just standing, just watching. The worst part is that during those lost hours, I wasn't unconscious. I was still in there somewhere, watching through eyes that no longer obeyed my commands. The thing that had taken root inside me was driving, and I was just a passenger. I tried everything to get rid of it. I saw doctors who ran tests and scans and found nothing wrong. They gave me pills that didn't work and referrals to specialists who couldn't help. One doctor suggested PTSD. Another thought it might be dissociative episodes. Nothing explained what was happening to me. I saw priests who couldn't help. One old priest in a small church in New Mexico listened to everything I said and then told me something that chilled me to the bone. He said he had heard stories like mine before. There were places in the world where the barrier between here and somewhere else was thin, places where things could cross over. He couldn't tell me how to fix it. He could only tell me that I wasn't crazy. I even went back to Arizona, back to that rest stop, trying to find the crack that would lead me back to the tunnels. But there was nothing there, just dirt and rocks and the empty desert wind. I am writing this from a motel room in Ohio. It has been 7 months since I escaped from Blackridge. 7 months of freedom. 7 months of slowly losing myself to something I cannot name or understand. I can feel it right now, stirring in the back of my mind. It's reading these words as I type them. It knows I'm trying to warn people, and it doesn't care, because it knows that warnings never stop anyone. It knows that somewhere out there, another prisoner is hearing the humming. Another desperate soul is searching for a way out. The thing beneath Blackridge isn't a monster. It's not a demon or a ghost or anything from the stories we tell each other in the dark. It's something much worse. It's a door that swings both ways. And when you walk through it, you don't escape alone. I've found the only way out of that prison. I found the freedom I had been dreaming about for 11 years. But freedom isn't worth anything when you're not free inside your own head. Freedom doesn't mean anything when something else is wearing your body like a suit. If you ever find yourself in a place like Blackridge, if you ever hear that humming in the dark, I need you to promise me something. I need you to promise that you'll plug your ears and close your eyes and wait for morning. I need you to promise that you'll serve your time, every single day of it, and walk out through the front gates like a human being. Because the other way out isn't really out at all. It's in, deep inside, where something ancient and hungry is always waiting. My name is Marcus Webb, and I think this is the last night I'll be able to call myself that. The thing inside me is getting stronger. It's been testing my control all day, making my hands move when I don't want them to, turning my head to look at things I don't want to see. Soon, it will take over completely. Soon, Marcus Webb will be just another set of memories for it to feed on. I hope this story reaches someone before it's too late. I hope whoever reads this understands that some doors are meant to stay closed. Some ways out lead to places far worse than wherever you started. The humming is getting louder now. I can feel it in my bones calling me back, calling the thing inside me home. Maybe that's where I'll end up, back in those tunnels, back in that pulsing darkness, another part of whatever lives beneath Blackridge, waiting for the next desperate soul who thinks they've found a way to escape. Tell me in the comments, if you were serving years in prison and you heard about a way out, a way that might cost you everything, would you take it? Would you trade pieces of yourself for freedom? Because I made that choice, and now I'm not sure if what's left of me is still human enough to regret it. Be very careful what you wish for. Be careful which doors you walk through. And if you ever hear humming coming from beneath the floor, do yourself a favor. Don't ever follow it. Some prisons are made of walls and bars, but the worst prisons are the ones we build inside ourselves when we try to take shortcuts we were never meant to take. I found the only way out, and I wish more than anything that I hadn't. This is Marcus Webb, or what's left of him, signing off forever.